Hi, it's Jeff Cohen from the Florida Healthcare Law Firm with another episode of the Healthcare Disruptors Series. I'm here today with Domenic Lacovone with Relive Health, the largest growing health center wellness franchise in the country, for real. The numbers say it.
Yeah, it's real.
You've got how many that are slated to populate?
So we have 200 licenses sold.
Yeah.
We're projected to have about, I want to say 800, a little bit under 800 open by the end of 2030. And right now we have 20 locations open, and we have another like 35-ish in construction.
Dude, I don't think even Dairy Queen's putting up those numbers.
It's crazy.
That's insane.
With the model that we did it differently. A lot of the franchises in this space, I didn't know, I'll be totally honest with you, I didn't know like what real franchising was until I brought Jerome on. So like when I thought I was doing this the right way, he's like, you're fucking this all up, So basically he came in and he literally told me, like I just said, he said, stop everything. We're going to redo this. We're going to restructure it.
Wow.
And we're going to sell to these big groups of people. So the way that we're selling Relive now is we sell by state or by territory, right? So some states have more than one territory. Like Florida obviously has more than one territory.
Yeah.
We can sell all those territories together, or we can sell them piece by piece. But like, for example, we just sold Texas to one group, and that group bought the entire state. And the way that we have the demographic or the data to prove that is we hired this company, and we have a group called Buxton. Are you familiar with Buxton?
No.
So what Buxton does is they actually will go in and they'll come into your data and they'll grab your patient demographic. So they'll see what your perfect patient is, who they are, how much money they make, where do they live, what habits do they have. And it's actually pretty wild that they actually track you by your phone. So not only do they see, this is all through Experian, by the way, this is where they get all their data from, but they also see your like-minded habits. So like people who go to your office, where else do they go? So they can track a phone that comes in your door and see all the other places they're going with that phone. They don't tell you who it is, but they'll say they also shop at Whole Foods, they shop at Trader Joe's, they go to this gym instead of this gym. So you know your patient, right? And then it takes that data and it builds models as to how close you can open your locations without cannibalizing the other location that's closest to you.
That's cool.
Yeah, so
that's essential.
It's essential. Space. It's super essential because this is a mistake that I made when I first opened, is I gave people too much space. So for example, when I sold my Wellington office in Florida, I gave them a 25-mile radius. But that 25 miles goes all the way into Parkland, it goes all the way into Boca, and it kind of fucked me in the beginning. And I had to go back to him and say, hey, look, Mike, I hate to do this to you. I know it's in your franchise agreement. Is there any way that I can get this territory back from you? Because one, you're not pulling people from over there, and here I can prove it to you. Right? So we pull up Buxton, we show him the people who he's pulling from, and that data is great because not only does it help me sell, it helps me educate my own franchisees on where to market. So they're literally like, you can pull up, for example, that one location and there's lines that will be drawn of where these people are all going. Now the data is a fortune. It costs an arm and a leg to get it, but to build a company the way that we need to build it, that's what we needed to do.
One of the things I like about what you're saying is how you can screw things up.
Oh, I fucked everything up.
But it's so good because a lot of people that will listen to this podcast think, I have to get everything dialed in just perfectly right. No. Otherwise I'm going to fail and I can't grow unless I get everything worked out.
I think the best thing that I learned was like, what Jerome is great at, I'm not great at, but what I'm great at, Jerome has no idea how to do. Right? So like in the healthcare space, like we did a great job of building, I mean, you can recall it, probably one of the first membership models for HRT.
Yeah.
Right? Before Relive, it was more of like you go into an office, you buy 6 months worth, or you're buying like as you need it, right? You go in and you say, I need my testosterone, I need this, and they're like, oh, you're going to sell a 10-week package. It's going to come, and when you run out, call me again, we'll get it again. Well, what we did differently is when I got into this industry, it was pretty saturated already. I know it was a different type of saturation. It was more of like that rejuvenation clinic saturation versus now it's like this whole new era of medicine. But I needed to figure out a way to be able to get new customers that in an industry that was saturated. So what I did was I said, well, the most people can't afford to dish out $4,000 or $5,000 at once, besides like, wealthier people. And how can I get the blue collar construction worker or the teacher or the firefighter or the cop to be able to afford HRT? And I went back to my compounding pharmacy and I said, guys, I need smaller vials of this stuff made. I need the shipping to be cheaper, and I want to be able to offer it to them in a monthly membership. So that way, instead of having to come out, let's say a 12, 16-week supply, they can pay, $2.99 a month. And it exploded, and that's kind of what started Relive, was this membership model of HRT. And, that piece of it has still to this day been the meat and potatoes of the business. We do a ton of other things now. We do lasers, IV, aesthetics, stem cell. But at the end of the day, that recurring book of revenue is what I know I'm going to make every month going forward. And as long as my retention is there and I keep adding to the pie every month, it's just going to grow.
Unbelievable what you've done. Now, I remember you coming into the office and you had what, like 2 or 3 centers?
I think 2. Yeah, I had 2. And I just opened my second one.
That's so funny, man. And you told me what in gross terms, what you're looking to do.
Yeah.
And I thought, great, another client that's really passionately committed who probably won't perform.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And what did you do? You knocked it out of the park. You exceeded your own expectations.
For sure. Yeah, I never
You didn't think you were going to do this.
No, I truly didn't know I was going to franchise. So when we first started it, I opened my first one in Stewart, and I really enjoyed it. I loved what I did. It was an awesome business, and my friends that I went to school with started seeing my posts on Instagram and social media. And this was when Facebook ads, this is 2017. So Facebook ads were just getting popular, and no one was doing them. For medical, for medical, it was I was going up against, doctors that were 50 years old that had no idea what Facebook was at the time. And I was like, fuck, I'll try it. If it works, it works. If not, no big deal.
Right.
So at that time, it was just such a new thing. And I loved it. And, my Facebook ads started showing. My friends were like, hey, I want to do this. And a couple kids I went to school with, I was like, all right, listen, I don't know if this shit's going to work. I have no idea, but all I'll tell you is I'll sell you my licensing, my name, right, for $1,500 a month. And then you do whatever you want. I'll help you through it. And if it works, great. So we did my first one in Alabama, took off. And I was like, oh shit, okay, it worked. Then I did another one in Minnesota. And then that one took off. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to open my own second one. So then I opened my second one in Palm Beach Gardens. And then that one took off. And I was like, okay, this thing has some legs, right? There's legs here. So I hired my first franchise attorney I'll never forget, his name's Charlie Barnett. And I met him in Delray. I think it was at Starbucks in Delray. And he's like, yeah, I'll do this for it. It's going to be $100,000. And I was like, $100,000? I was like, for what? He's like, to put all the shit together for you. And I was like, fuck. I was like, that's expensive. So a lot of people that don't understand franchising, you don't make money in franchising for a while. Your businesses or your initial offices are funding that desire to open this franchise for quite some time because the infrastructure that you need to put into this is just astronomical.
Well, you're getting paid on the earnings of the franchise.
And if they don't perform, you don't get shit.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean? So
exactly.
A lot of people say franchising isn't the most lucrative business for someone to get into it, but in turn, it is in a way of it's less risky, right? Because you're not going to sell something that you're not going to make money off of, because I wouldn't want to invest my time helping someone where I'm not going to get anything in return.
One of the problems that I've got with franchising in the healthcare space is the issue of quality.
It's huge.
So I was having this conversation at a conference with another client.
Yep.
She's got 70-something locations.
Yep.
And she's talking about scope creep, where somebody gets into the industry, into the franchise, they're providing what the franchise provides, but then the clinical scope begins to broaden as the client demand broadens. And so they start providing more and more things, and there's more regulation, and there's more risk, and there's all that stuff.
It's not cohesive across the board.
And I'm like, well, do you have the ability within your franchise documents, for example, to require your franchisee to come to you to ask for permission to broaden the scope? Yeah. And do you have the ability to say to them, I need to see your policies and procedures, and I need to be able to approve that? Yeah. Because in a franchise model, it's a little bit of a string of pearls in the following sense. If one bad thing happens in one location, and the newspaper gets a hold of it, they tarnish the whole brand.
You're done.
So quality control is such an issue in your business.
So when I told you that when Jerome came on board, one of the things he told me to do was stop selling. Right? Yeah. And the reason being was for more than one reason. One, I wasn't targeting the right franchisee. Yeah. I was targeting hustlers like myself at the time, and I'm not meant to be a franchisee. I'm not meant to follow rules. I hate to say it like that, but I'm meant to I get shit done no matter what it takes, right?
Right.
Those are not the people you want to own a franchise.
Right.
You want people who are going to read a manual, and they're going to do everything that's on that fucking manual. Right. I don't even read a manual. Right. I just go. I mean, and that's just my honest, that's just me. So that was the first thing. He's like, you're targeting the wrong people. He's like, I know how to find the right franchisees. I already have them. He's like, so don't worry about that right now. Yeah. He said, what we need to do is create education. because you need to make sure that if someone comes into a Relive in Stewart or a Relive in California, they're going to get the exact same experience.
Right.
And I was like, that's absolutely true. I totally agree with that.
Right.
So what we did is we actually hired physicians that don't work in office at all, and all they do is they're teachers. We have our own online school that we send all of our practitioners to, our front desk girls to, our nurses to, every single person that works in all of our offices, and it's a whole university. So it's called Relive University. You go into this portal, and every single, it's basically you start before you're hired. So the nurse practitioners, the PAs, and the MDs all have to start 3 months before they're hired. And they have to take modules and pass these modules in order to even get hired. Now they're getting paid while they're doing it. It's a much lower pay than they would get once they come on full time, but they have to prove to me that they're able to do this, right?
Right.
So by the time they start, they know all of what we want, and then we also put continued education on there. And we can track it. So I can log into this portal at any given time, and I can say, how's Texas doing? I'll log into Texas, I'll see all the providers in Texas, and I'll be able to see how far they are in the program and their test scores. So I can say, hey, look, Judd is my area developer in Texas. So I'll say, hey, Judd, Christina in Corpus Christi, didn't even do her modules this week. What's going on? And then he can go and say, hey, look, Christina, we're keeping track of this. You're behind. We're opening this day. Are you going to be able to be ready for the opening? And I think, and that's why I keep going back to it. Like the systems that any business, right? You build it on a foundation, and franchising is hard because when you start your first location, you know a lot more than the average person that's going to open this franchise. Most of the time these people are buying a business because they don't know how to do it themselves, right? They need your help. Right. And I think you're naive to go into it thinking that everyone that's going into this business is going to have the same knowledge as you. It's the polar opposite. They have no knowledge and they're paying you to teach them how to do it, and that's why you're getting your royalty. And this education makes or breaks the business. And it's slow. It takes time. You have to invest so much into this before you get anything out of it. And yes, 6% royalty is great, but you're not getting a good amount of royalties back for, I've started franchising in probably I would say really franchising in 2019. So it's been 3 years and now we're doing really well and not even close to what we're going to do. But there were 2 years there where I was just bleeding money into it to build build this infrastructure. The back end systems, the licensing fees for Salesforce. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of Salesforce. Yeah. How much does that cost? I think it was $800,000 to build out our back end for Salesforce. And I can't even tell you what the fuck they did because I don't know anything about IT, but it works really well. And I can go in and I can see all my offices now. I can see every office's daily sales. I can see how many people are in the waiting room. I can see how many people are being treated. It's just, it's what you need to do it right.
You had this vision from day one because I remember the first meeting.
Yeah.
But obviously, because you said it earlier, you found out you're not the guy.
Correct.
And you found out that the model needed to get tweaked and redirected. And Jerome, who we should give credit for, he's the founder of
Massage Envy and Orange Theory and European Wax Center.
Yeah, so that guy really knows franchise business, right?
Yeah.
So he comes in. How was it for you as you're stumbling into stuff like a billiards ball, bouncing off of things that are challenges and opportunities for you to learn and find out what you don't know and find out what you do need that you don't have? How was that?
I mean, it's easier when he's telling me, obviously, because he has a proven track record, right? Like, I would honestly say that if someone else came into the picture and he didn't have the track record that Jerome had, it would have been a lot harder for me. Yeah. But, he did everything he said he was going to do. He came in, he's like, look, I want to acquire 30% of the company. I'm going to open, 100 of these things in a year. And I was like, fuck, like, if that happens, like, this is going to be crazy, right? And he did it all. And the people that he was introducing, I mean, if you speak his name in any franchise setting, like, everybody knows who the guy is, right? Yeah. He hasn't failed in the space yet. And I think the only hard part working with Jerome in the beginning was him understanding that a medical franchise is so different than an Orange Theory.
100%.
Right? Like, you can throw, I'm not giving any discredit to Orange Theory, but, throwing some treadmills in a room, hiring some personal trainers is much different than hiring physicians, training them on how to do these protocols. You have people's lives in your hands. So it was me at first, like, look, like, that's not how this doesn't work like that.
Right. And and for the listeners, you have a healthcare professional license.
I do.
At stake.
Yeah. Yes.
You're
correct.
a chiropractor.
Yes, I am. Yeah. So when I explained to him that, and it took him being more involved. Like, he had to come into the office and sit there and be like, oh shit, okay, this is way more complicated. Yeah. And it is more complicated, but the return on investment is way better. Yeah. Right. The average return on investment on an Orange Theory, they call it the average volume, like annual volume for an office, is like they might do $1 million, $1.5 million a year, where the average Relive is doing 300,000 a month. So the money's there. It takes a little bit longer to learn it, but it can do extremely well.
What's the biggest surprise to you as you've gone through this process?
Man, I don't know.
Pleasant or unpleasant?
So unpleasant would be, I think unpleasant would be people. I think we've talked about it before. It's really hard. Like I'm so passionate about what I do. And again, like going into something where, some of these people, all they care about is money. And unfortunately, these big PE groups that are buying these states, like it's all data to them.
Yeah.
They're looking at average volume, they're looking at EBITDA, they're looking at multipliers, and they're like, I'm going to sell this in this many years, and this is what I'm going to make. And if this all works out, great. And it's like, okay, but like, I did this because I love to help people. I truly enjoy this healthcare. I truly enjoy what it does for people, and I've been a testament to living this lifestyle for so long that it's hard for me to not look at it that way. I think like you put the patient first. You give them that quality of care, and the money comes, right? But they work backwards. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you can put the right people in place to manage these offices, right? So I think it's part of it is, anytime you get these big conglomerate PE groups in, like you need those guys. If anyone tells you don't, they're full of shit. If you really want to scale a business, and grow it as fast as I want to grow it, you need those guys to grow it. Not in the parent company, but to develop it. They need to be there. But you also need that person on the front lines of every office that has that me in them, that cares about the patient, that wants to see it through.
The vision.
The vision, and I tell all my guys that, the most beautiful part, and this is the best part of it, is, when I first got into this industry, I thought it was all about the way you look, right? Like, oh, I want to be 50 and I want to have a six pack and I want to, look fucking great. And it's like, those patients I could give a shit about now. I care about the guy who comes in and he's like, I want to have enough energy to come home and play with my kids, or I want to save my marriage, or, I want to be alive to see my grandkids. And those stories and those changes are, I have goosebumps talking about it. You can't make that shit up. It's incredible. Yeah. So you literally are changing people's lives. And that's why there's days where I fucking hate going to work in this industry, because it's tough, there's always shit. You're a human fire extinguisher. That's my job now. That's all I do. I don't get to do the cool shit anymore. My job is when shit goes wrong, I get called and I have to figure out how to handle that call, right? So those are the stories that keep me wanting to pursue this industry.
Yeah. Biggest surprise, positive surprise?
I would say the biggest positive surprise is the amount of attention that this industry is getting right now. I never anticipated. I mean, do you recall, like when I started this in 2017, the cops were getting called on me. I mean, people were like, this kid's selling steroids out of an office. He's promoting IV drug use, and it's like, yeah, but was I selling testosterone? Of course. Was it legal? Absolutely. But like now it's like, anti-aging is the best thing in the world and testosterone is the best thing in the world for you. So I rode that wave of, being criticized for the last 3 years, and now it's becoming popular. So I feel like the worst is over. But it is so cool to see how welcoming, this industry has become, because it wasn't. And it wasn't.
Let me ask you this, because it's always interesting to me to find. You're a young guy. Yep. You're incredibly successful. Yep. Your vision and your commitment, your passion, and all of it has lined up in just the right way. People see it. They invested in you, yep, believed in you, and now you have this massive enterprise. When did you start thinking like a business guy?
I think I've always had like an entrepreneurial mindset. I think I don't think I would have been able to do this if I didn't. I do believe that there became a certain point where I had to pull myself totally out of the clinics, because I wanted to dabble in both at one point, and I was like, I still want to see patients, but you can't. It's not possible to play both roles. You have to disconnect from that, and you have to fully go into the back end side of it.
So like you're either working on the business or in the business.
Exactly.
And you decided to work on the business.
Had to. Yeah. I had no choice.
Right. And the business needed you to.
Yeah, I had no choice. Right. And I think that clicked probably, I would say maybe 2 years ago is when I fully stepped away from it. I put everyone in control. I hired a great executive team for them, for Relive, and I just sat back and I tried to develop the growth of the business. And that's truly why I think we are where we are. If I was still doing what I was doing before, I would never be able to be here. And that was hard for me because I'm very I hate not when things don't get done right, you know? So
Right.
when I put all these people in place, there were a ton of mistakes being made, and I kind of had to like go through the pain of that.
Yeah.
Now the patients probably didn't see any of these mistakes, right? But I saw it on my side. Things weren't getting done right, you know, numbers weren't being hit properly. Like the way that we were selling was a little bit off. So certain things that just, I didn't like, but I tell everyone this, you know, even in like the other companies that I own now, it's like, if you don't hire those people and put the right people in place, like you'll never be able to scale anything. You know, you're going to stick yourself in this like, you know, rabbit hole of, you know, hamster wheeling in one spot for the rest of your life.
You know, you said it earlier, your commitment, your passion for wellness, for
Yeah.
health and wellness. Obviously, it's been a personal path for
Yeah.
you and a commitment for you personally.
Yep.
What inspired that for you?
So when
I know that
yeah.
you're so committed to helping other people
Sure.
be happy and healthy
Yeah.
now, but you started it, you
Yeah.
guinea pigged yourself.
No doubt. Yeah. So when I was in college, I used to compete as a bodybuilder. So I was always like experimenting with testosterone and things that way. And I always just loved endocrinology, you know, and there was a point in time where I truly felt like, and a lot of like the older bodybuilders, I always say, you know, those guys sometimes have more knowledge than some primary care physicians in this field because they experiment on things well before they become socially accepted in normal medicine. So some of the stuff that is now accepted in normal medicine, these guys were doing forever ago. Yeah. Subcutaneous testosterone injections, those were being done 15 years ago. Yeah. But now you just hear about it as being the new cool way to take testosterone, you know? So
slower absorption.
Exactly. You know, it does, less hurt, less pain.
Right,
Women
right,
can do
right,
it. It's just
right.
there's so many different ways to explain it. But, you know, I started there. And then I think what I realized was I thought that the risks of these, like, you know, testosterone or the ipamorelins and the peptides way outweighed the reward, and then being heavy had worse contraindications to care, right? So, like, what was frustrating for me was, you know, heavy people, you know, preaching about how being a bodybuilder was unhealthy. And I was like, no, it's just, you know, anyone in any industry goes too far, right? I mean, you know that in any industry. If you take too much there's people who take too much aspirin, right? Yeah. There's in every piece of healthcare. Yeah. So I think just finding that like happy medium back then and understanding it and learning from it. And I loved it. I loved feeling good. I loved looking good. I performed better. You know, that's why I like it. That's how it started.
I love it. It's a great story.
I mean, it's crazy because it started kind of being vain, right? I just liked the way it made me feel. I liked the way I looked. And then as I progressed into this industry, it was like I loved seeing the changes for these older people who.
What's your greatest story or stories of people that you've touched in this space?
Okay, I got two.
That really touches you.
All right, so I have a guy. This was one of them is a stem cell story. So I had a girl who worked in my Alabama office, and they weren't doing stem cell there at the time. And she called me and she said, "Hey, I have this guy who wants stem cell done, and he wants to drive to Florida." And I was like, "Okay, like no problem." So I got on the phone with him, and he's like, "Look, he was in a walker. He had two canes, or he would carry a walker." And he said that all he cares about is being able to dance with his daughter on her wedding day. That's all he cares about. He said, "I don't care how much it costs. I don't care how much stem cell I need. I just want to make sure that it was like a year from that month that I can walk down the aisle with my daughter and I can dance with her." And I was like, "Sure." And at the time, Dr. Capaldi is one of, like, in my opinion, one of the best stem cell physicians there is. He worked for me at the time. He has his own office now. But I called him. I was like, "Hey, we can't fuck this up. Like, this guy's about to drive from Alabama to Florida. And I want to make sure that if he's going to spend this kind of money, we're going to be able to take care of him." And he's like, "Yep, this is what it's going to cost." And I was like, it was expensive. So I told him. The next day, the guy drove down. He had a backpack full of cash, gave me a backpack of cash. And I was like, holy shit. That was like my first big ticket like sale. Dr. Capaldi injected him. I would say like 7 months later, texted him. You know, she's like, "Oh, I feel good. Everything's getting better. You know, I'm starting to move." And then on the daughter's wedding day, the wife sent me a video of him dancing with his daughter and walking down the aisle with her. And she literally said that he's never looked happier. This is the best money he's ever spent. Thank you so much, you know, and to this day, we're still great friends. So that was one. I have a mom story. So my mom used to have to sleep in one of those like beds that like V's you. Yeah. You know, because she had like such bad, it was like L5S1 nerve root issues. And she did everything. You know, the only thing she didn't do at the time was get surgery on her spine. And again, Dr. Capaldi did a local, an actual local, I think it was like in the facet stem cell injection, which is pretty rare to do in an office. Yeah, because they'll usually butterfly around. Yeah, usually you do like a nerve, you know, close to it, perispinal. Right. But yeah, so unreal. So my mom has never had an issue since. Sleeps normal, runs, goes to the gym. Like,
Unreal.
yeah.
How long ago was that?
That was 3 years ago.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so she's good. And then HRT wise, you know, there's so many. A lot of them just come down to the fact of like saving. I love the saving marriages story, you know, because the woman will come in and the woman will
And
say,
people who are watching this probably think, oh, that's kind of hyperbolic nonsense. But
No, I mean, listen, sex in marriages is everything. You know, I've learned that the hard way going through like this realm of medicine, and it's usually the husband or the wife will come in first, you know,
Yeah.
and it's usually most of the time it's the husband. The husband comes in and he's like, look, you know, my wife thinks I'm fucking cheating on her. You know, I have no sex drive. And you do their hormone panel and their sex drive, you know, their testosterone's like 110. And you're like, you know, all the things you're feeling are pretty much how you should feel, you know, and you fix it. And then, you know, the next time the patient comes in, they're bringing their wife in with them. And the wife's like, you know, whatever you're giving him, give me. Like, I want the same thing he's on. And then you literally change people's lives, you know, and you don't realize how much comes from that non-intimate relationship, right? Like that, it causes so much stress and strain and conflict at home. And it is so cool to see all of that go away with like 4 to 6 weeks of HRT.
wow, that's fast,
I mean,
man.
it's quick, yeah.
That's
It works.
fast.
I mean, you see those results more than you see the other ones, right? It's quicker, so it's great to see.
Autumn and I in my office, we were talking to a good friend about his situation.
Sure.
Young guy, testosterone level of like 300 maybe.
Yeah.
And young guy. And all these correlated issues. And it's like, dude, have you ever heard of this thing? He said, no.
Yeah. I'll tell you right now, when I first started Relive, that was in 2017, I would say the average, so we had a protocol in place where if you were under 35 years old, we wouldn't give you TRT except, you know, starting with HCG and Clomid. And you'd have to do that for 2 months straight to see if we could naturally boost your hormone levels before we put you on testosterone. Because that was just young at the time, right?
Right.
I would say today, our average patient now, our lows are in like the high 20s. So I would say in the last 6-7 years, the low, like the age of low T has dropped from 35, 36 to like 29.
Wow.
And I fully believe that has to do with the food we're eating, you know, the quality of life. I think it's just a more sedative lifestyle. People aren't doing anything anymore. They're sitting in chairs all day. They're not outside. Kids just live on iPads. So I think that it's lifestyle change that needs to happen.
Yeah.
But I see it. You know, I literally see it in my office. And we had to get our chief medical officer to lower the age at which we would allow testosterone therapy, because we're like, look, like these kids aren't abusing testosterone. These kids are straight edge. Like you can tell in blood work if someone's abusing testosterone, right? They might have like an elevated hemoglobin and hematocrit and a low testosterone. So you're like, okay, you just came off to come get your blood work done so you could get more testosterone.
Right.
Like we can see that.
Yeah.
So these kids coming in, they truly were just low T. You know, these kids had, it's just lifestyle. You know, you can't really chalk it up to anything else besides just poor habits and what's in food.
You don't want to talk about something with you that is not spoken about, needs to be spoken about, and there really needs to be help, and it's women.
Yeah.
You know, my experience of watching and being involved with and advising HRT clinics, back then it was just HRT. They weren't integrated.
Yeah.
Starting with like, you know, in the days of Cenogenics.
Sure.
Anyway, you know, it was always a guy that came in.
Yep.
There was a protocol, HCG and testosterone and anastrozole and stuff like that. Anyway, so it was this common, very simplified
cookie cutter plan.
Yeah, it was and it was one size fits all,
Sure.
and it was simple.
Yep.
And when I started representing all these businesses, I realized, you know, this is kind of an annuity model for them. It's like, let's sell product where it's clinically indicated, but the focus was the product sales.
Yep.
And here's what I noticed as I got older was everybody's missing women. Everybody. Like they got estrogen and testosterone and progesterone and all these other issues, and they're told these things. Women are difficult. Women are complicated. And there's no patience and there's no understanding, and it's a bunch of dudes trying to help women. And you know what? They're not getting help.
It is I would say that is the number one thing. If you ask anyone who started with me in the beginning, that has changed the course of, I guess you could say, publicity of Relive, has been being able to take care of women the right way. And it is not that difficult to do, but it is a very different model than most people use. So we do things much differently than most clinics with women. I would say our patient base now has fully flipped. I would say
Really?
we're probably 70% female and
Unreal.
30% male.
I've
and
never
that's like
heard that.
unheard of.
I've never heard
it's
of that.
unheard of in our space.
In fact, what happens is most folks that do HRT basically fail at it.
Oh, for sure.
And so they
Yeah.
maintain their male patients,
It's easy.
but they
Males
lose all
are
their
easy.
female.
Males are super simple. You give them testosterone, you keep their estrogen, between 27 and 32, they're good. They're good to go. They don't care about anything. They really don't care if they're infertile at the time because they probably are past
Right.
that age. So you don't
Right.
have to worry about their LH and FSH.
Right.
But when it comes to females, we do things so differently. And
Wow.
that's part of this educational course that we give. It's mostly female. That
Really?
whole course that we have is really to teach
See,
about
that's
the female.
for the listeners.
Yeah.
That's really a game changer
It
because
is.
nobody's speaking that.
And we don't
language.
use blood. So we use blood work. The way that we treat females is we use blood work to kind of see like I guess you could call it like a high level overview of what's going on.
Right.
Blood work in females doesn't tell you anything. They have so many different ways of breaking down estrogen and cortisol, and there's E1, E2 pathways, and just all of these different things that can really destroy their hormone functions. That we use a specific urine test for this. So it starts with blood, it elevates to urine, and the urine test is done over a full day. So it's not one time in the day. It's throughout the day, so we can measure different cortisols and the way they're breaking down their progesterones and their estrogens in their body. And that test, I will tell you, has changed the way that we treat females. And we do use injectable testosterone on females. We don't believe in creams. We don't believe in pellets. We need to be able to change things quick and accordingly. So a lot of times what you'll see is, and this drives me crazy. This is like, if I could, one pet peeve in the whole industry when it comes to HRT in general is pellets if they're not done properly and creams if they're not done properly. Because the issue I have is you come to my office and let's say, your age, you come in and, you look at this chart of whatever it is and I'm saying, okay, I'm going to give you testosterone, I'm going to give you, an anastrozole, and I'm going to give you, that's probably it, right? For a pellet, that's all I'm going to do. So how are you going to tell me that you and the 30 other people your age are going to metabolize that the same way?
Right.
It's impossible. Right. There's no fucking way in the world. Right. There's no way in the world. It depends how much fat you have on you. There's so many different parameters. How active you are, how much you metabolize things is totally different, right? So how can I look at a chart if I'm a pellet clinic and say, okay, this is his age, this is what he needs, this is his level, put the pellets in. And then 4 weeks later, when you go back for your follow-up blood work, your testosterone's through the fucking roof, your estrogen is through the roof. What do you do? Can't do shit. You have to wait 6 full months
for it to get absorbed.
For it to get absorbed and for you to re-put pellets in.
Yeah, it's a huge issue both for men and for women. I've heard this before.
And women is the same thing. So you have the same issue.
And they
with
got
women.
hair coming out on their face.
I've had women come to me with like deep voices and facial hair, and there's nothing you can do about it until that wears off. And the same thing with creams. If you think about it, we hate using creams, right? I hate using them. I tell every female not to use them. But some of them do want cream, right? But the problem is most clinics will take a cream, and the more shit you throw in one prescription, the cheaper the prescription is. So if you get a cream that has progesterone, testosterone, and estrogen in it, it's cheaper than doing 3 separate creams. But again, if I give that patient that cream with all 3 of those things in it, what happens if one of those is off? So what you have to do to treat the patient the right way is you have to split those creams up. Yeah. You have to do it for 4 to 6 weeks. Right. Make sure it's right. And then when it's right, you can combine the creams.
And what most people will do, because you've seen this, is they'll run out the prescription. They'll use what's left because they don't want to waste money. Yeah. Meanwhile, they feel like shit for a month.
And the doctor's telling them, but they don't want to because they just invested and I don't blame them. The way it should be is, and like, I believe that when there's value to things, right? So if you tell someone, this is why I'm doing this and this is why it's going to be more expensive up front, but it's going to prevent all this stuff from happening, as long as you provide the value as to why you're doing it, the patient's going to understand why you're doing it. The problem is when you do it without telling them, you give them this cheap bullshit price and it doesn't work, then it doesn't matter how cheap it was, it's not valuable to them because it didn't work. Right? So value and price are 2 totally different things. And if you can provide the value at the price you're giving them and explain why you do what you do, your patients are going to stick around.
Brilliant. I could hug you for what you're saying for women. Yeah. And you're giving some look behind the curtain on how things are done and need to be done. Of course. Because most consumers, we don't have the interest in it. We don't have the ability to research it. We don't even know what we're looking for. And everybody's selling the same kind of solution. So we figure, well, that's what you buy.
Yeah, it's so crazy how, there's so many of these offices all over the country and how different the experience is when you walk in the door.
Yeah.
You know, and I have no problem talking about this stuff because you can copy it and it's still not going to give you the same experience that you're going to get at a Relive. So it's very, you know, we're very different, and we believe in all of these things, right? All of this stuff, all these little tiny things that we're doing collectively make the experience incredible.
Well done.
Yeah.
Boy, your commitment to the quality,
Yeah.
to the customer experience, and the why
Yeah.
is evident.
Yeah.
What's next? I know you're doing other stuff.
Yeah,
What
I
are you
mean,
into?
so I have the supplement company right now, Raw Sports Supplement Company. It's exploded. So again,
Just got into
Walmart.
Walmart?
Yeah, so we just
Walmart?
launched in Walmart. We're in Vitamin Shop in GNC. We're in pretty much all the different countries all over the world. We're doing a huge show in Dubai next month, so we're going to fly over to Dubai. Really big company. I'll probably end up probably selling that next year, I think, maybe the year after. But Revive MD is now the vitamin company that's attached to the clinics, right? So we make one of the good things that I really don't talk about that much, but when we first started Relive, we had an issue of it's really hard to find good quality vitamins that can attach to these policies and procedures or protocols, I guess you could say, right?
Yep.
You know, testosterone does things to the human body that you have to keep an eye on, right?
Yep.
Thickens the blood. It can mess with some liver function over time. There's certain things that you just have to look at while you're taking all these other ancillary drugs. And when we got into the industry, there was no one making these vitamins really for HRT, you know, blood pressure vitamins, lipid profile vitamins to help with your lipid profile if you're starting to take oxandrolone or things like that. And we wanted to come out with this line because what I was doing was I was sending all these people to Amazon to buy, you know, a plethora of all these different single ingredient
Right.
products.
Right.
And I was like, this is stupid. One, it's stupid because I have these people taking 100 things when I could just combine it into one pill and they could take one thing, right? So we started that in 22 years after we started the clinics. In 2019 we started, and all we did at first was just organ health supplements. So the names of our products are, you know, kidney, liver, lipid, blood pressure, brain. So all of these things are meant to help while you're on, you know, HRT or things like that, or if you're not, they're just good quality vitamins for you to help with your prostate and things like that as you age. And sure enough, that took off too. And now that's in Vitamin Shop. You know, we sell in Vitamin Shop, huge direct-to-consumer business. But I would say that that's probably one of the biggest missing pieces in our industry is, you know, you get excited about the peptides, you get excited about the growth hormones and the testosterones, but if you're not taking all the things to keep you healthy along the way, you know, you're going to run into problems.
Yeah.
I don't care whoever tells you that you're not, you know, if you're on testosterone for 20, 30 years, you're going to see some shit change in your blood work.
And you know, to the point, you know, everybody's willing to take a pill and take a shot and do whatever, but not everybody's willing to do the heavy lifting themselves.
No.
Like, you know, a lot gets resolved by going to the gym.
Yep.
A lot gets resolved by making sure you sleep.
Eat right.
By making sure you drink water.
Yeah.
By stop eating and fast food.
That's the hard
joints.
stuff, right? The
hard stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the stuff that's hard for me. It's like, I just want to eat stuff that tastes good, even though I know it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
But God gave me a wife, and she's like, she cares about me, and the finger comes out.
Yeah.
And it reminds me, you know, it's like, you know what? I need to dial that back.
And that's
I'll go to the gym.
Yeah.
But, you know, like a lot of people that go to the gym, we go, you know what? I can metabolize this table. I can drink whatever I want to drink. I can eat whatever I want to eat. And as long as I go to the gym, it'll all work out. I'm a living example of, no, it won't.
Yeah.
You better dial it in.
It's so true. And that's what, like, if there's one thing that scares me about, like, the craze right now of semaglutide and Ozempic.
Makes me nuts,
It scares the shit out of me.
It makes me nuts. Here's why. Because there's this magic thinking that we have in our culture that you could just buy something that's a substitute for exercising some intelligence and some discipline.
I deal with this every day.
So I had to do this. It's a true story. So many of my clients are doing tirzepatide and semaglutide.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I got to guinea pig myself and find out what this is. So I did it for a month.
Yep.
And fortunately, I'm not obese and I don't have any serious health issues. So, you know, there isn't really any clinical indication for me to do it. But I wanted to try it for a month. And here's what I found. It really cut my appetite down.
Yep.
So it really controlled how much I'm stuffing in my face, when I'm stuffing it in, and what I'm stuffing in.
Yep.
And I'm like, I can do that without this. And I bet that a lot of people that are turning to that stuff, they're not obese. You know, they got another 10, 15 pounds that they can lose. They just need to make more intelligent choices.
They're buying self-control.
Yeah.
They're literally buying self-control.
I don't love that when you're dealing with a pharmaceutical.
I don't like it because, one, I think that it's a drug that's going to be abused. There's no doubt about
it's
it in my
happening now.
mind. Yeah.
I want 5 pounds. They're using it for body contour.
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that it's going to be one of the most. It'll be the new HCG diet. I tell everyone that's kind of what it's going to become, right? And unfortunately, it's probably going to get removed by the FDA because it's going to get abused so much. And that's what bothers me, because like my father-in-law has diabetes. And my father-in-law takes it because he has diabetes, and his A1C is the best it's ever been, right?
Sure.
So like, I don't want to see the drug go away, because it can really do great things for people, especially morbidly obese people. If you're morbidly obese, there is a place for this drug.
Absolutely.
You know, there is an absolute place for the drug. It's going to help you get weight off quickly. And if you're 400 pounds and you need to lose 200 pounds, this is going to do, being 400 pounds is not healthy. So the little bit of unhealthy nature of what semaglutide or Ozempic or tirzepatide is, to get that 200 pounds off is fucking worth it.
Yes.
You know, but the problem is you have these little young girls who are 25 years old, who are in great shape, who are taking it to stay 110 pounds, and you know, their joints are deteriorating because of it. They're puking because they're taking so much of it. They're staying nauseous all week. And that's when you have to look at it and be like, why? Like, why?
You know, one of the things that I notice in this industry is, over time, there's healthcare and there's wellness. They're two totally different things. Yeah. Healthcare is what's covered by insurance. Wellness is what's not covered by insurance. And the gulf between the two is growing. And one of the things I love about wellness is it meets patient demand.
Sure.
Patients want to feel better, look better, and they want to have a better life, a more vibrant life. I love that. The most dangerous thing in the wellness industry is patient demand. Because what happens is, people depart from the clinical mindset and the clinical pathways that they're used to practicing. Yeah. You know, diagnosis, prescription, treatment, document. What happens, they turn into kind of a juice bar model. Agreed. Where it's like, whatever anybody wants, I'm going to sell them.
Yep.
And that is really, really dangerous in the wellness space.
And
it's going to cause a huge amount of regulation and a huge amount of over-regulation.
Way too much. I mean, you just saw it. They just pulled all the peptides off, you know, what was it, last month?
That's right. Yeah.
So I think what you're going to see
DPC 157 is on the list.
Drug
I'm like, what?
Greatest drug. I mean, even when they pulled HCG from compounding, it was just on that biologics list, which makes absolutely no sense.
Couldn't believe it.
But they don't know. They categorize things in a way, and if they pull that category, it's going with it.
You know what? Because, in my opinion, the regulators, they're trying to protect the public. They're doing the best they can, but they're relying on data and input and expertise that they just don't have.
It's old. The data they have is way too old. And the issue I have with this, like you just said, is like, even with the tirzepatide and the semaglutide, like we have a call every month with all of our franchisee owners. Yeah. And when this came out, I saw it clear as day. I saw all my franchisees pushing, oh, you know, I'm going to get a semaglutide banner in the front office. Like, this is so easy to sell. It's like fucking selling water. And their sales are going through the roof. And I basically put them all on the phone. I said, guys, this is not going to be here forever. And if you think that I'm going to let you guys shift the whole model of this being to only take care of this drug, you're out of your mind. Get your patients on HRT the right way, fix their blood work the right way, and have a patient forever. And if they want to add tirzepatide, if they need it, if it's a true need for them and they're overweight, and you know, if you have a lady that's coming in that needs to jumpstart her HRT, put her on a little bit, that's fine. But don't build your entire program on this, because I assure you it's a way to fail. And thank God we did, because you're already starting to see it slow down. You know, it was super, super hot, and now it's kind of cooling off. And now, like, you know, they're getting tirzepatide ready because probably semaglutide will go away. Who knows? But it's just, the writing's on the wall already, and I hate, this is like my biggest pet peeve about this industry. Yeah. It's like the cool, hot shit, and then everyone pushes to it, and then everyone forgets about the stuff that makes sense.
And they overdo it.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, I'm really proud of what you've done. Thank you. I'm incredibly happy for your success.
Thank you so much.
And more importantly, I love how you're doing this.
Thank you.
So thank you, brother.
Thank you, man.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, pleasure.